Okay, well, welcome back. This is our final video in our series, and we get to talk about the fractional advantage, how fractional leadership actually accelerates growth without the full time cost. Now, both Michael and I are fractional leaders. And so, therefore, this is something that we are very, passionate about. But it works really well, especially when you're talking in the small, mid-sized company structure. You don't wanna have to pay for a full, fully experienced CIO or a CRO. It's much easier to have, like, a retainer model where you can get, the expertise that you need at a fraction of the cost. Michael, what's your experience and what are you seeing out there?
I think especially in the roles that we're talking about, a lot of small mid-market companies, they'll have a head of engineering or a head of technology, that is a very tactical leader, but maybe not a strategic leader. Um, Frequently that person rises in their organization based on a combination of their technical expertise and business understanding, and those are totally important. But a CTO likely has a better view of the overall innovation landscape and how that could be applied to your business. And that's not something you need full time. You don't need somebody to be thinking about your technology vision and strategy full time. If somebody is doing that for you on a fractional basis, that's going to be enough to work with the head of engineering, to work with sales, to work with ops, and to make sure that there's consistency in the messaging on what we're working on, right? Because, and I've seen this in lots of organizations that I've joined where everybody's very good in many cases on working on what's in front of them, but they're not good at communicating a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is what separates, successful companies. Their ability to understand what the market conditions are, how they might need to pivot. And I think, a fractional CTO is able to, you know, have conversations throughout the organization, including the C level, to help drive a roadmap for success.
Right, and I feel similar to, like, a fractional CRO or a fractional CSO, where you can be very objective, right? You can have, coming in with an outside perspective a lot of times comes with a lot of clarity, and therefore, when you're too much in the weeds, you might not be able to make the tough decision on, "This is a salesperson that's not gonna make it, so therefore we're gonna have to cut this person," or you're too afraid to pivot direction because the economy is difficult and therefore you need to get creative and come up with different services to be able to offer your clients versus sticking with the same service offerings, for example. So I think that some of the key advantages that I see, it also allows um, you as a CEO, to get how do I say, it's almost like you get to have a reality check, right? So you might be thinking about going down a certain path, but now you get to have another person, that's a seasoned, executive that can provide that feedback and, is not influenced
Yeah.
by the company. There's no drama, right? I mean, you're objective, you're gonna call it the way it is, and you don't have to worry about any of the politics or, hurting anybody's feelings. You're just gonna call it the way it is.
And, one of the things I've been thinking about over the course of our discussion is, you and I have talked at great length about solving the challenges of communication and alignment, through better collaboration. And I sometimes think that what we say I mean, A, it sounds like, oh, of course, of course you should do that. B, I think, I don't think we make it sound easy because we know it's not. But, in your experience, what is the language and messaging you can give to a CEO that informs that person on the importance of some of the disciplines we've talked about? How do you get that top down buy in that, because people don't like when we call their baby ugly, you know? And so, how do you talk to a CEO about making sure that, they should take on these new changes?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Michael, because it's not an easy conversation, but I'm always direct from the get-go. The reason why you're bringing me on board is to be able to have this direct conversation with you in regards to what I think, I've seen work, what doesn't work. So it's not so much about, calling the baby ugly, but it's a matter of what's the expression like positioning it differently, adding a little bit of color to it so that they understand that it's not that the baby's ugly, but it's a matter of, gee, if we do the next few things, my baby is going to be really cute again, right? So it's like, how do you get them back on track, to use the baby analogy? So directness. I don't like to sugarcoat, especially when there's important messages about if the company needs to pivot. Number one. Or if you need to look at organizational structure and how do you change the organizational structure, either by um, adding new talent or removing some of the existing talent, because they are not going to take your company to where you need your company to go to.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, what we talk about does require some hard decisions to be made, right? You need to inform leaders, that sometimes they might have to disagree, but commit to the plan, and that you need them to stay aligned. And, we talk about consistency of communication. And that does require leaders to listen to each other and hold them accountable for that. And, while the prescriptions for success I think we have might seem obvious, the challenges for those outcomes are ability to hold each other accountable.
Accountable and the implementation of it, right? So you're right. I mean, some of it sounds like, motherhood and apple pie, like it's pretty straightforward and basic. But the implementation is where I see companies struggle, and that they need that, external enforcement to try to keep them on track.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, because I worry that people think that we think this is easy, or that we don't have the experience to see the dysfunction. But all this is based on seeing the dysfunction and realizing that it's not easy, but creating these disciplined patterns slowly moves an organization in the right direction.
Exactly. So, I mean, in summary, what we're saying is that, fractional leadership is about buying expertise, not adding bureaucracy or adding an administrative burden to your organization.
Yeah, that's right on.
Right. So, okay, call to action is, if you think fractional leadership could give your company a boost, please comment below and would love to start a conversation. Thank you so much, Michael. This has been great. Enjoyed having this series with you and look forward to our next series.
Thank you so much.